Okay, we're back with another one. Let's start this shit. No much talking. We made already two. We're gonna make this one too. And then I need to stop for a couple of minutes. And then we keep going. I'm gonna make another one too. I'm gonna try to make at least five. Because I was gonna make five for the whole week. But nah, why? If I can make five today and five tomorrow and five the next day, we're gonna be making five. Like the five.
Steeped in violence, with gangs first
Let's watch this one. Inside the most terrifying gang war. In Chicago, inside Chicago's most terrifying gang war. Let's see that, my friend.
Chicago's historic underworld is one steeped in violence, with gangs first roaming the city as early as the 1800s. Since then, many different gangs have come and gone through the city's underworld, but the one that this story is about has to rank as one of the deadliest the city has ever seen. This is the story of No Limit. The origins of the gang that would come to be known as No Limit's Muskegon Boys, otherwise known as NLMB, originally had its roots starting the gang the Almighty Black P Stones, shortened as the Black P Stones. The P in the Black P Stones nation was said to stand as a symbol of peace, prosperity,
Keep it P, my nigga. Keep it P. Keep it pushing.
people, and power. However, this gang was anything but peaceful. Formed back in the late 1950s by Jeff Fort and Eugene Hairston, the BPSN was considered Chicago's most powerful and sophisticated gang at the time. In later years, Jeff would go on to convert to Islam and change the name of a faction of the gang to El Ruckan. You can imagine the power that this gang held by the fact that they
Yup.
even warned police officers that if they went after members of the gang, then they would be eliminated.
Yup.
The threat was supported by the gang's strength. By 1965, the BPSN had over 1,000 members in its ranks. However, it's difficult to say whether all of them had joined willingly. This is because one of the methods that the BPSN would use to gain new members was through intimidation and threats to their lives. The gang's influence and reach
That's
spread throughout the
harsh.
city until Jeff eventually had roughly 7,000 members.
That's like join us or get fucked, nigga. Like, oh, that's crazy, bro. But then, how can you fucking win their loyalty? I know they're scared of you, but you need to win their loyalty too. I hope after scaring them in, you try to show them, like, you ain't that bad.
Members under his leadership.
But you
By
still bad.
1972,
So,
the
damn.
gang was bringing in over $4 million in income per year. In today's money, that would be roughly $30 million. Obviously, the ways in which the gang got this money weren't entirely legal. In fact, their main avenues of income came from extorting school children, nighttime
What?
lady workers, and drug dealers, along with selling drugs themselves.
Damn,
Whilst life
extreme.
might have seemed good for the gang, things soon took a turn. Eugene was arrested in 1966 on drug charges and then later shot in 1988 by a rival gang. Jeff, on the other hand, was arrested in 1986 after being accused of conspiring with the Libyan government, which was under Colonel Gaddafi's rule at the time, to commit acts of terror in America. He was eventually sentenced to 80 years in jail for this crime. With both of the BPSN's leaders either in jail or deceased, the leader fell to Jeff's nephew, Eric Fort. Much like his uncle, Eric was a feared member of the gang and was eager to follow in Jeff's footsteps. He took control of the gang's territory between 75th and 79th Street on the east side of Chicago. This area is so deadly that its nickname is actually Terrortown for all the violence that occurs there. However, roughly
Damn.
20 years later, Eric and 13 other higher-ranking members of the gang were arrested in 2011 in a sting operation dubbed by police as Terrortown 2. The police had been working the sting for at least a year and eventually were able to arrest the members on drug charges, amongst other things. With the main members of BPSN in jail, the gang was left in disarray and the territory that they once controlled was now for the taking. By this time, a few new gangs had cropped up in the east side of Chicago, and they were all competing to take control of Terrortown to become the next leading gang in the area. What ensued was a
Always like this. Somebody get knocked out. Always comes someone new. You just need to hope the new guy is not even worse than the one before him. And sometimes the new one get fucked over really quick. Bro, gang life is harsh.
Huge power struggle between gangs. No Limits, a gang that had been formed in the early 90s by G-Bull and G-Jill, was one of the groups vying for the top dog position. By the time the turf war began in 2010, the leadership of No Limit had fallen to G-Herbo and Lil Bobby, both young men who had grown up in the Terrortown and knew just how dangerous the streets actually were. A few other members of the group were Bibby's brother, G-Money, Cairo,
G-Money.
Faro, Lil Wet, Crazy James, Job, G-Moneski, and their top hitter, Mad Max. No Limits mainly controlled the 79th Street area of Terrortown and was determined to defend it,
Isn't
no
G-Herbo
matter
Max
what.
too?
However, they didn't have the territory to themselves alone. Next door to No Limit was the gang Muskegon Boys. This was a slightly smaller crew that occupied 79th Street and Muskegon Street and was created by two men called Doeski and Whitebread. Shortly before the war for more territory, the Muskegon Boys were finding themselves under heavy pressure from another gang, the Lakeside Gang, otherwise known as KTS, which stands for Kill to Survive. Not wanting to give up any territory to KTS and trying to survive and thrive in this harsh world, the Muskegon Boys decided to approach No Limit and form an alliance with them. This was the birth of NLMB, standing for both No Limit.
Let me get a bev. I'm dry as fuck smoking here with no bev. Let me get some beverage. I need some energy. Let's do this.
Limit's Muskegon Boys and Never Leave My Brothers. The formation of this new gang would go on to be involved in one of the most deadly gang wars that Chicago has ever seen. In the years shortly before BPSN was effectively disbanded, multiple different gangs were vying for the territory and trying to make power grabs. One of these gangs was known as Black Mob. To begin with, Black Mob and NLMB were relatively okay with one another. The gangs didn't mess with each other and instead followed a set of rules to keep things civil between them. One of these rules was that if any drugs were sold on either gang's territory, then the gangs in charge of the area would get a cut of the money. However, one member of NLMB didn't heed these rules, and it resulted in deadly consequences that would last for years to come. The NLMB member who broke the rules was a man called Devious Johnson, otherwise known as Vito in his gang. He had apparently been dealing on Black Mob territory and not giving the gang a share of the money that he had made. This was a sign of disrespect to the Black Mob crew, and so they decided to teach Vito a lesson. The gang jumped Vito in the streets, assaulting him and threatening him not to deal in their territory without paying the tax. However, whether through stubbornness or pride, Vito didn't listen. He even had the nerve to attempt a hit on a member of the Black Mob gang whilst they were out with their family. Unfortunately for Vito, he wasn't successful and had effectively sealed his fate at the same time. On the 27th of April 2009, at around 1:20 AM, police responded to a report of shots. When they arrived on the scene, they discovered Vito had been hit in the chest with a bullet. Due to what had been going on, members of NLMB were almost certain that Black Mob was the one who had eliminated Vito. However, it would take another 8 months before the suspect was discovered and jailed. A breakthrough in the case came on the 8th of December 2009, when a man called Finley was arrested on drug charges. To reduce his sentence, Finley told police that he believed he had seen Black Mob member Trinity
Y'all
Walton,
can make a
gang
game
name
right now. You know how many times I said damn? I need to put a counter. I'm fucked up, dude. I only say the same shit over and over again. I'm sorry, my public. Don't worry. You know, we're getting used to this shit, bro. Let me get into it back before you get mad.
Boo carry out the hit on Vito. With this witness statement, police were able to arrest Boo, and he was eventually sentenced to 60 years in jail. This sentencing was the thing that solidified the destruction of NLMB and Black Mob's relationship. The set of rules that kept both gangs from being at each other's throats were discarded. What would follow after this was a series of hits that would leave both gangs mourning their losses. Not long after the loss of Vito, LLMB would go on to lose another member only months later. On the 2nd of July 2009, a senior member of NLMB, a man called James Robinson, street name JMO, was eliminated. It is not known who carried out the hit, but police were the ones to find the gang member on 79th Street with a round in his head. It was as if NLMB's bad days had started. Following J-Mo's passing in April 2010, another member of NLMB was taken out.
Dang,
However,
okay,
this time, it
bro,
wasn't by a rival
street.
gang,
Oh,
but by the police
okay, no, by the
themselves.
police. Okay,
Isaiah
okay.
Jackson,
Oh.
otherwise known as Zale, was allegedly stopped by police at around 10:30 p.m. for a traffic violation.
This is gonna-
Once the car had stopped,
I'm sure
Zale
these niggas
supposedly
gonna
jumped
get-
out and began to open fire.
are gonna get all this shit back in blood. They're gonna be hollering at everybody. Everybody's gonna be terrified. It's gonna be terrorized. They're gonna be traumatized, nigga. Why you killing people's homies like that? I know we're running the streets, but damn.
Fire on the police. The police returned fire, tagging Zale a few times. Once it was clear that the gang member was no longer a danger to the officers, he was taken into custody. Sadly though, Zale's injuries were too severe and he later passed away in the hospital at around 1:45 a.m. But things had only started to go down for NLMB, and only a few days later, on the 12th of April 2010, the gang lost another member. Faison
Damn.
Robinson, otherwise known as G Fazzo, was playing a game of dice on the 2900 block on East 79th Street. A few hours later, police received reports of shots fired in the area and rushed to see what had happened. Once they arrived on the scene, they discovered Fazzo who'd been hit in the back. The police rushed the gang member to South Shore Hospital, but despite the doctor's best efforts, Fazzo passed away. The loss of Fazzo was a big hit for NLMB, who mourned their friend through posts on social media. However, not all felt sad about his death. Who would be happy for his passing, you might wonder? It was NLMB's main rival, KTS. Whilst NLMB was mourning Fazzo, members of KTS were mocking the deceased man on social media and dissing him however they could. They even went as far as to carry out a hit on Fazzo's family and friends whilst they were hosting a memorial block party on the year anniversary of his passing. In this attack, 4 men were hit and one 10-year-old boy. Luckily, no one was fatally wounded. While the rest of 2010 and 2011 saw tit-for-tat incidents between LLMB and KTS, things escalated in 2012 in a hit that left No Limit reeling. On the 19th of February 2012, just
Yeah.
before 7 p.m, members of KTS were driving through No Limit territory, looking for a fight. Whilst cruising the streets, they noticed a large group of NLMB members hanging out in front of a liquor store on East 79th Street. Seeing a perfect opportunity, one of the KTS members leaned out of the car window and opened fire. The weapon that they used was allegedly an automatic with an extended clip, meaning that a lot of damage could be done in a very short period of time. And this was evident in the scene that the gang left behind. Out of the group who'd been in front of the liquor store, 5 had been injured, including a 14-year-old boy. However, the 2 had suffered a much worse fate. 53-year-old Gregory Glincy and 19-year-old Jamal Harris, aka Rock, had both sustained fatal injuries, which led to them passing away right at the scene. The fact that such a large group of NLMB members had been attacked in their own territory shocked the rest.
To be honest, I'm really done with gun violence. I just watch these videos because, yeah, I like them. But I'm really done with gun violence, bro. There are too much guns on the street. Too many people getting killed for no reason. I'm not really no reason. I know it's just much of the time is disrespect and shit. But y'all can talk that shit out, bro, I think. Or I don't know, like, it's difficult. Hanging in the street is difficult, bro. But I will still be pushing the peace because, damn, nigga, nobody want to see nobody die on no side, bro. Most of them get killed so young, so I don't fuck with it.
Of the gang. They couldn't believe that KTS would have the courage to carry out such a hit. Then, on the 23rd of August 2012, only a few months later, another group hit was carried out on NLMB. It is thought that KTS were the ones who once again carried out the attack, injuring 8 members of NLMB, including G Herbo and his cousin. Of course, by this point, NLMB was outraged at KTS, and they were ready to exact their revenge for their injured and fallen friends, and that's exactly what they did. Whilst the idea of revenge was definitely on the minds
see
of
the
many
whole
No
time
Limit
they put
members,
in photos
G
of
Herbo and Lil Bibby, whilst the idea of revenge for
Juice
by this
WRLD?
NLMB was
But on
outraged at
which side is
KTS,
Juice WRLD? I don't even know.
and they were ready to exact their revenge for their injured and fallen friends, and that's exactly what they did. Whilst the idea of revenge was definitely on the minds of many No Limit members, G Herbo and Lil Bibby also decided to express themselves in a more creative and productive manner. The two gang leaders, who'd been friends since meeting in a youth group when they were younger, took up rapping about their lives on the streets. It was a way for them to express how they were feeling about their lives and to honor those friends that they'd lost to street violence. Once the two were a little bit older, Bibby decided to take G Herbo to a nearby studio in Chicago. It was here that the two recorded their first professional track, called Kill S. The original video for this song now has over 50 million views on YouTube. It was Lil Bibby and G Herbo's first breakthrough in the Chicago drill music scene. It also opened up a legitimate way for the gang to make a passive income, as they were gaining money from the views they got on YouTube. After the hit on NLMB member Rock, there were once again more tit-for-tat hits between the two gangs. However, the next major incident, which created even
video
more
was made by a European person, because I only see euros the whole time.
After the hit on NLMB member Rock, there were once again more tit-for-tat hits between the two gangs. However, the next major incident, which created even more hate between KTS and No Limit, occurred in 2013. During the latter half of 2012 and going into 2013, members of KTS created a vlog series called No Lakin. This series essentially documented members of KTS as they walked around No Limit's territory, mocking the gang and calling them cowardly for not coming to confront them in their own home. However, whilst all of these vlogs were disrespectful to LLMB, it was the third video that really escalated the war between the gangs. In this third installment of the series, KTS members KTS Von, KTSD, and Posto can be seen walking through NLMB's territory. As usual, they were all calling LLMB out for not confronting them, when, all of a sudden, they spotted a few members of their rival gang heading into a nearby McDonald's. Once inside, the three KTS members began antagonizing the NLMB members, including 17-year-old Cairo, whom KTS Von pinned to a wall and tried to demand him to diss his deceased friend Rock. Cairo refused to do so, leading to KTS Von punching the teenager in the face.
Oh, damn.
With the escalation of violence, a security guard tried to usher the KTS boys out of the restaurant.
Yeah.
It was at this point, though, that another member of the NLMB, a man called Moody, appeared from the bathroom with a suspicious-looking item in his hoodie. Once the KTS members were back on the street, they continued mocking the NLMB members. But this quickly changed when the NLMB boys also exited the restaurant. With the threat of Moody and his suspicious item, KTS Von, Dre, and Posto quickly began jogging away from the scene.
Yeah.
It was at this time that shots could be heard in the background of the video. Moody had had enough of being mocked and wanted to teach the KTS boys a lesson. One of the shots managed to tag Posto in the arm. Despite how the video ended, KTS Von still uploaded the vlog to YouTube, effectively making him enemy number one to NLMB. This incident strengthened tensions between the two rival gangs, which caused the start of a bloody war between KTS and NLMB. After the McDonald's incident, violence between the two gangs escalated a lot. On the 29th of October 2012, the uncle of NLMB's Mad Max, their top hitter, was shot outside of his home. He sadly didn't survive. It was thought that KTS Von and Bud were the attackers, and with KTS believed to be responsible for the attack, Mad Max was eager to get his own back. Well, he didn't have to wait long. Only a few weeks later, on the 10th of November 2012, KTS member Bud, whose real name was Anthony Bagsby, was walking on the 2600 block of East 79th Street at around 12:55 p.m. This was actually No Limit's territory, so either he was very brave or very stupid, considering he had a target on his back. Whilst walking, around 4 men approached Bud. They were all NLMB members and supposedly included Mad Max. When the group of men were close enough, they all opened fire on Bud before fleeing the scene and leaving the man fatally wounded on the street. In response to this hit and the previous hits on NLMB members, both KTS members and NLMB members posted a series of social media posts, each mocking the other gang's deceased friends. As well as that, on the 14th of March 2012, Lil Bibby released his new track, How We Move. which was another huge hit for the man. During this time, Bibby was very focused on his rap career and was unconsciously creating a way out of the streets and to a better life for himself. A few weeks later, on the 5th of April 2013, another KTS member was taken out, supposedly by Mad Max. After losing multiple friends to the fires of their rival gang, NLMB was making a return. The man, who went by Lolo, had been walking out with a friend when Mad Max supposedly happened across him. An hour after the two groups met, police reported that Lolo had been fatally wounded at the scene, and his friend had been taken to hospital with a bullet in his foot. Obviously, with multiple hits on their members so close together, KTS Von and Posto wanted revenge. This came in the form of eliminating a man called Fiaro. This man was actually a member of the gang Sirkin City. However, it was thought that he had loose ties with NLMB. Because of this, on the 25th of May 2013, KTS members eliminated him whilst he was taking some rubbish to the bin for his elderly dad. The KTS crew had been cruising the streets looking for some target when they spotted Fiaro on the sidewalk. Sadly for the young man, it seems as if luck simply wasn't on his side that day. Fiaro's elimination was one of the bloodiest in the war between the two gangs, as he was hit 8 times in the head, leaving him nearly unrecognizable. All of these attacks were merely a precursor to what would become known as Terror Town's deadly summer of 2013. This summer saw multiple people from all the gangs in Terror Town lose their lives. But the hit that shook the gangs, NLMB in particular, was that of Kobe, a greatly beloved member of the No Limit gang. On the 10th of August 2013, 21-year-old Kobe, whose real name was Jacoby Heron, was out playing dice with other members of No Limit. This included G Herbo and Cairo. Once the game was finished, the group of men all split up to make their way back home. It was at this point that Kobe decided to refuse to get a lift home and instead told his friends that he would walk home. This would prove to be a fatal mistake. As Kobe was walking past the cursed McDonald's, where KTS had confronted members of NLMB before, a car came speeding alongside him. Suddenly, one man opened fire, tagging Kobe multiple times. Allegedly, a second man got out of the car and shot Kobe in the head, just to make sure he lost his life.
Finish him.
However, Herbo and Cairo heard the shots, but by the time that they had arrived at the McDonald's, they were too late. The suspects had already fled the scene, and Kobe had already passed away. Whilst it was never known for certain who had carried out the hits, it was certain that it was either KTS or Black Mob. The loss of Kobe hit No Limit hard. He was incredibly loved by his gang, and they vowed to get their revenge. After the loss of Kobe, NLMB members were eager to get a hit on their enemies, and their main target was none other than KTS's Posto. This would be a difficult task to accomplish though, as Posto had been arrested on the 5th of October for a charge of a misdemeanor. However, only a month later, on the 18th of November 2013, he was set free once again. 5 days after being released, Posto, whose real name was Tyshawn Anderson, was caught lacking. The KTS member had been walking in the hallway of some apartment on the 2700 block, East 80th Street, when 2 masked men ran up to him and shot him in the head. A tenant of the apartment had heard the shots and called the police, but by the time they'd arrived, the suspects were gone. Posto was then rushed to the hospital, however, his wounds were too much for him and he passed away. As you might think, when the news of Posto's passing reached NLMB members, there was lots of celebration within the gang. Posto had been a thorn in their sight for quite a while, and the news that he'd been eliminated was something they'd been looking forward to. On the other hand, KTS Von wasn't as happy. Posto had been one of his closest friends, and he was saddened and angered by his passing. As you would expect, KTS Von vowed revenge on NLMB. However, the promise of vengeance was soon put on hold as, in early 2014, KTS Von was shot in the chest by a member of No Limit. Von was able to escape the attack and survive, but due to how serious his injury was, he was laid up in hospital for quite a while. At the same time, NLMB's Mad Max was arrested several times throughout 2014 for misdemeanors, which took him off of the streets as well. This meant that the 2 of the heaviest hitters in the gang war were both out of commission in 2014. Amazingly, this led to a sort of peace between KTS and NLMB. It was during this time that Lil Bibby and G Herbo were really able to focus on their music careers. Both of these men's music careers had begun to take off after the release of a few of their tracks. However, things took a giant leap forward for Herbo when he was asked to feature on Nicki Minaj's song Chirac. Following up with this feature, G Herbo was also invited to attend the Summer Jam concert with Nicki Minaj. This was the first time that he'd performed in front of thousands of fans, Whilst it was also a scary opportunity, it was one he loved as well. However, a problem would soon arise for both Bibby and Herbo. With their rise to fame, people started to become a lot more interested in their pasts, especially the press. Not wanting to tarnish their reputation, both Bibby and G Herbo began to distance themselves from the NLMB gang. Herbo tried to claim that NLMB wasn't a gang at all, but more of a group of boys who looked after and supported one another. But Bibby took things a step further. Eager to continue his music career and able to see a clear way off of the streets for good, he began to cut ties with NLMB. In the end, he was able to sign a record deal and eventually moved away from Terrortown completely. After Lil Bibby left, G Herbo was essentially the one left in charge of NLMB. Despite trying to appear not connected to the gang in front of the press, he would always be around to help his friends and celebrate when things went their way, such as in 2015. Throughout the years, KTS brothers Von and Dre had taken out a lot of NLMB's members and disrespected them afterwards. But the ultimate form of disrespect
Oh, yeah. I've heard of it. I just wasn't that clear in my mind anymore.
came when the brothers, who often went by the name Cutthroat Brothers, made a music video where they wore hoodies with the names of deceased NLMB members on them. This seemingly pushed members of NLMB over the edge, and on the 23rd of June 2015, KTS's Von was caught off guard. On this day, it was believed that KTS Von had been hanging outside of some apartments in the Greater Grand Crossing neighborhood on the south side. He was supposedly high on pills and all alone, a dangerous combination, especially when you have a target on your back. Much like you would suspect, a group of people in an SUV spotted Von and slowed down so that they could open fire on him. Then they sped off, leaving Von fatally wounded in the streets. While it's not known exactly who carried out the hit, it was suspected that either NLMB's Mad Max had carried out the attack, as he had created quite a name for himself throughout the years. Or NLMB member Chopper had tagged KTS Von, as he had argued with Von on the previous night on social media. No one was actually arrested for Von's hit, but Chopper was later arrested and jailed for 10 years for supposedly taking out a man who wouldn't share his drugs with him. Either way, once news of the hit on KTS Von reached NLMB, the gang was giddy with joy. KTS Von had been one of the gang's biggest enemies, and with him now out of the picture, No Limit felt a lot more emboldened in their position as top dog. Following this good news, Herbo was then signed to record company CMG, a cinematic music group, on the 3rd of September 2015. With a contract in his possession, G Herbo's music career was seemingly on the up and up. It looked like things were finally going No Limit's way. On the 10th of July 2017, Black Mob's top hitter, Shooter Shells, was finally hit. And it was one of the bloodiest hits in Chicago's gang history. On that morning, Shooter had been hanging around his front yard when a car suddenly pulled up and 3 men jumped out. Immediately, they opened fire on Shooter, unleashing dozens of bullets. Shooter, whose real name was Cedron Dolls, was tagged in the head, chest, right arm, right thigh, right foot, right calf, and buttocks. He also suffered graze wounds to his left forearm and right wrist. But things didn't stop there. Once Shooter fell to the floor, the attackers walked up to his body and took turns firing into his head. Police stated that he'd been hit as many as 18 times in the head, leaving him unrecognizable. Overall, police found over 43 shells at the scene. The hit was so bad that the FBI was called in to investigate the incident. However, it is uncertain if they found who did it. Though it was believed that NLMB's Mad Max was involved in the incident, and considering that he quickly took to social media and began dissing Shooter, it wouldn't be surprising. However, as people say, what goes around comes around, and karma was quick to catch up with Mad Max. 1 year after the hit on Shooter, NLMB Mad Max was supposedly tagged by KTS member Hell Rel, whose real name was Terrell Webb. The hit happened on the 3rd of August 2018, at around 3 p.m. on the 7600 block, South Kingston. Max was supposedly chased and shot in the body and arm, but he managed to escape. He was later found slumped over in an apartment complex and taken to hospital. It is here where Max would fight for his life for the next month. Unfortunately for him, his wounds were simply too serious, and he passed away on the 3rd of September. Before passing away though, Mad Max supposedly made a deathbed confession, naming Hell Rel as his attacker. Police took Rel into custody, but due to a lack of evidence, he was released. It took a little while longer for police to gather the evidence needed, but on the 28th of August 2018, Rel was once again arrested. And this time, he was charged with involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in jail. With the loss of Mad Max, NLMB was devastated. They'd just lost a beloved friend and their top hitter. Looking for revenge, it seemed as if it was KTS's Dre's turn to face the consequences of his actions over the years. The hit on KTS Dre, whose real name was Londre Sylvester, happened on the 11th of July 2021. Dre had been in Cook County Jail after he broke his parole. However, on the 10th of July, his girlfriend posted his bail, enabling him to be freed from prison as long as he followed his bail rules. He needed to put $5,000 up as collateral and wear an ankle monitor. Sadly for Dre, he would never even make it home to fulfill his bail obligations. This is because as the man exited the jail, enemies who'd been lying in wait for him pulled up in a car and opened fire. After what seemed like hours, the suspects fled the scene, leaving a fatally wounded Dre on the streets. Police eventually found at least 64 shells on the ground, and Dre was riddled with just as many. After this hit, it seemed as if all of the heavy hitters from both gangs were out of the picture. But throughout all of this time, what had become of G Herbo and Lil Bibby? Well, despite both of these men having successful careers, G Herbo seemingly suffered through a rough patch in his life. Over the years, from 2018, he was charged with multiple different crimes, most of them misdemeanors where he would have to pay a fine. However, he did have to go on probation for 2 years after being caught with illegal firearms. The latest charge he was given was for wire fraud in 2023, where he ended up paying over $100,000. But law wasn't the only thing giving Herbo a hard time, as he was clinically diagnosed with PTSD from his time on the streets. However, he keeps fighting it while producing music. As for Lil Bibby, he opened up his own record label with his brother, and the two have been busy discovering new talent with a focus on finding new and upcoming talent from Chicago itself. Whilst Bibby and Herbo are seemingly successful cases of two men coming from incredibly harsh conditions and escaping the streets, they are sadly a minority when it comes to gangs and gang warfare. Many of their friends and their rivals weren't even able to survive the world of gangs, let alone make it big in life. Hopefully, in the years to come, more stories like Bibby and Herbo's will start to happen, where young men turn from violence and start looking for a better life. Let me know what you think of this crazy gang rivalry in the comments below, and if you like the documentary, why not check out our other videos on the channel? Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons to keep up to date with brand new videos. See you next time.
Okay, that was a long one. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, just like the video, you know. I need to go to work, but what I'm gonna do when I'm shower, get ready, and maybe make a short one playing on TikTok, and then I'm done for now, and then I'll do when I come from work, I'm gonna try to make another one, a couple of another ones. So I'll be stopping this one, and I'll start. I think I'm gonna go to TikTok, and I'll see you tonight. So see you guys.